Hello, friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Juicebox Podcast. Heather's 50 years old. She was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes after she was misdiagnosed with type 2 diabetes. That process was painful for her, and we're going to talk about that today. Nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan. Don't forget, if you use my link, drinkag1.com/juicebox, you'll get a free year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first order. And if you go to cozyearth.com and use the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout, you're going to save 40% off of your entire order, and that's in time for the holidays. Get over there now. If you are the caregiver of someone with type 1 diabetes or have type 1 yourself, please go to t1dexchange.org/juicebox and complete the survey. This should take you about 10 minutes and will really help type 1 diabetes research. You can help right from your house at t1dexchange.org/juicebox. And while I don't ask often about this, there is a public Facebook page for the Juicebox Podcast. If you go give that a follow, that would be awesome. It would really help the show. There's also a private group, which I talk about a lot, but go find that public page too. The episode you're listening to is sponsored by US Med. usmed.com/juicebox or call 888-721-1514. You can get your diabetes testing supplies the same way we do from US Med. This show is sponsored today by the glucagon that my daughter carries, Gvoke HypoPen. Find out more at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox.
My name's Heather. I was diagnosed with type 1 a year and a half ago. Obviously, misdiagnosed as type 2 first, like everyone else.
How long was the misdiagnosis for?
Again, that's...
You think we'll figure it out as we talk? Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
I'm trying to think back. I got confused with that question of, like, from like the DKA ICU visit. It was about a month before I got into an endo, which was quick. When I got the correct diagnosis. But I had gestational in 2012. And of course, when I look back now, I'm like, ooh, I had symptoms from like 2014.
Yeah. Well, if you have gestational, and how old are you right now?
I'm 50.
Okay.
So I was a later mom. I was just at the end of 38 when I had my kids. I have twins.
Oh, okay. So you had twins when you were 38. You had gestational with them. So at 49, when you show up with diabetes, they just say, oh, you have type 2.
Correct.
Because that's the expectation. Okay. Are there other autoimmune issues for you or your family?
So I have twins and they're identical. And the one has vitiligo, and his showed up probably like maybe when he was 2, I started to notice it. And my mother had it as well. So I knew what it was.
Yep. Your mom has an autoimmune issue. One of your twins does vitiligo.
Correct.
Okay. And how about thyroid?
Nothing that I know of, but
Okay.
I know that's like a tricky one, right?
I mean, any super tired people in your family or can't
Other than me.
can't digest their food, hair falling out, stuff
Not
like
at the
that.
moment.
Okay. Not at the moment.
Yeah.
There's
still time.
What a type 1 answer to a question, by the way. Hey, do you have any of these problems? Not yet.
It's coming. We'll see.
Don't worry. I'm looking
Yeah.
for it. Okay, so vitiligo, a little uncommon, but not completely. And you were 38 when you had the kids?
Yes.
48. They're 12 now-ish?
Yeah. Well, they'll be 12 in August.
Oh, cool. Happy birthday.
Yeah.
Did you get like one of each, or how'd they come out?
No. So identical
Oh,
boys.
they're identical. I'm sorry, boys.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So in
Nice.
theory, they should be exactly the same, but they have some differences.
Have you seen that TikTok trend now where it's like about twins and they're not identical, and somebody's like, what a waste of time.
No, I haven't.
Could have got all that trouble to make twins and they're not identical. What leads you to the doctor? I assume if you had gestational, maybe you knew what was happening to you?
So I actually didn't. I did that, whatever test, right? When you drink the whatever, is it you're drinking glucose, whatever, when you're pregnant, whatever they make you do.
It's what's it called? The glucose, not a challenge. It's a glucose tolerance test.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I passed out taking that, and they were like, oh, you probably lost the baby. And I was like, what? Like, why would you say that? And if that's a possibility, like, why did I take this test? Like, that was my first of like distrust or just
Heather, I gotta tell you,
with them.
every conversation I have, I'm drawn to be like, where do you live? So I don't move there. Like, that's what
it gets better.
Okay.
And I can tell you generically, it's 3 different states. So it's not even like state specific or city specific.
Okay.
Which is kind of sad. But anyway, so I luckily did not lose my baby, but then quickly found out there were 2 of them. And they wanted me to take, I don't even remember what it was. It was a pill. So I'm going to assume it was metformin. And I didn't want to take anything while I was pregnant. And they kept pushing it. And at my next appointment, they made me watch a video of someone giving birth to, how do I want to phrase it? Like, it wasn't well controlled. So the baby was rather large. And then I was like, okay, I'll take it. Like, they scared me into it. And I'm like, okay.
Wait, they scared you straight with a video of someone giving a vaginal birth to an oversized baby and saying you have to take care of your gestational diabetes?
Yes. They were like, this is going to be you.
Can I ask a question? Were you considering not listening to them? Like, were they like, this lady's going to be a problem? We got to get out the big gloves right now?
I mean, I felt bullied. I hate to use that phrase, but I did. I felt like, all right, do I want to keep arguing this? Should I just trust? So maybe I shouldn't say bully, but I was like, maybe I should learn to trust these people is maybe more my thought process at the time.
Make sure I understand. You didn't want to take the glucose tolerance test right away?
The tolerance test I was okay with. I didn't want to take the metformin.
The metformin. Okay.
Yes.
Why? Tell me why, like, your initial reaction.
So I've always been more of like natural thinking of if I have an issue, I can figure it out, whether it be exercising more or drinking more water or something like a medication would be the last resort for me personally.
Okay.
And there's no like judgment, like however people want to live, that's how you want to live.
Right.
But for me, any sort of medication would be my last thought.
Okay.
So
I just want to, like, I have a brother like that, by the way, where he's just like, I'll be all right. And I'm like, yeah, okay. And I get his point, you know what I mean? Like, and I get yours too, but I just wanted to understand. So, okay. So they're like, hey, you're going to need metformin. And you were like, listen, I'll do a jumping jack and drink some more water. And then they were like, look what'll happen to your vagina if a 20-pound baby comes out of it. Is that about what it went? Is that about it?
Yeah. And just that, the baby would have all these issues. Like, there was a lot of scare tactics that they used. And then I think I did a little research, and this is so long ago, but I don't know if it was like a class C drug. I can't remember, but it wasn't something that you wanted to just take without any thought while you were pregnant. And that was my other like hesitation.
Okay.
And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. That was just my thoughts at the time, but I ended up taking it and it was fine.
Yeah. I didn't realize that there was like the driver's ed equivalent of a gestational diabetes video.
Yeah. And I felt like very set up because I had no idea. And then I went in for my appointment and they had like the video going. I'm like, what is happening?
What do you think happened on their side? Do you think like this hippie doesn't want to take our medicine? Is that what, do you think, is that how you came off to them, do you believe, or do you not know?
Probably. I mean, I think as much as I dislike most physicians based on my experience, I understand their thought process of, a medication is typically an appropriate path, right? That's their belief system, right? Like I understand that. I get it. It's not going to be, exercise or eat better or whatever. It's going to be, we have a medication that can help you with that. And that's their belief. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes that's probably the correct path, but not always, right?
I see what you're saying. Like, you feel like establishment wants to go right to medication and you're worried that they're just making that leap without trying other things. But do you look back now in hindsight and think, thank God I did that?
No.
No? But it worked out though, right? The kids came out like an average size and all?
So I had them at 28 weeks. So they were both only 2 pounds.
Oh, they weren't going to be oversized one way or the other. Right? You're like, they could have been 2.5 pounds.
Right?
But do you feel like you dodged other issues because of that? let me do that. You keep talking and I'm going to look for something. Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I don't think I did, because after I had them, it was simply, okay, you don't need to take the medication anymore. And like, good luck with your babies. Like, it wasn't, we should test your labs. You should follow up with this doctor, that doctor. It was just like, it was over. Stop taking it. Have a nice life. And so I did.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't think anything about it ever again. You know, I had 2 premature babies. I was living my life, working full time. I wasn't like, oh, I wonder if they should have suggested a follow-up, right? Which I don't know. You would think is standard protocol. Many years later, I'm in the ICU for a week at 90 pounds, diagnosed type 2 with malnutrition.
Well, how tall are you?
I'm 5'5".
5'5". What did you weigh before the diabetes got you?
So my whole life I've been like around 115, but like lean muscle.
Well, 5'5", 115, to lose 25 pounds is significant.
And I looked horrid.
Right.
And when I'm sure all of us do the same thing. We think back on certain circumstances and situations prior to being diagnosed. I probably looked like I was on drugs.
Yeah.
100% is probably why I was dismissed so many times when I knew something was wrong.
Oh, you went to the doctor and people turned you away at first.
Well, towards the end, yes. So, I mean, random things before then, like I think most employers, they have, the health fairs. And if you go get your blood work done, you get like $100 in your HSA. Like I would do that every year because I wanted the $100.
Yeah.
And back to 2014, I was testing high. It was like 120, 125. It wasn't like 600, but it was higher than it should have been. And it was always the same response of, oh, you're fine. You're thin. You don't have anything to worry about. Like it was always the same response. And I was like, cool. Great.
Heather listening to the nurse in the cafeteria of the place where she worked.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I'm like, cool. I'm not worried. Thank you.
This girl who seems to have been out of college for at least a month says I'm okay.
Yep.
I'm not going to think about this again, but I will take my Hyundai. Thank you very much.
I know.
Yeah.
It's also disturbing to me now, but at the time.
So you had some form of pre-diabetes LADA for almost 10 years.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I would assume so, right?
Sounds like it. Hey, can I read you a list real quick?
Yeah.
Babies born to mothers with gestational diabetes who have high blood glucose levels during pregnancy. During the pregnancy, of course, you're risking excessive birth weight, preterm birth, respiratory distress syndrome, miscarriage or stillbirth. After the birth, hypoglycemia, jaundice, respiratory problems, higher risk of obesity, and type 2 diabetes. Long-term risks for the baby is type 2 diabetes and metabolic syndrome. Increased risk of metabolic syndrome, which includes a cluster of conditions such as high blood pressure, high blood sugar, and abnormal cholesterol levels. I guess it's probably hard to in a world where it's hard to make a human being believe if they smoke a cigarette, they might get cancer 50 years from now. That, I don't know, how do you tell somebody that when they're pregnant? You know what I mean?
Right.
Because your glucose is a little high. It's not a thing probably even sounds scary to most people. But anyway, yeah.
I think that all sounds terrifying.
Yeah.
But all they used was
Metformin.
They're going to be huge and it's not going to be pleasant.
Right.
That's all they said.
Oh, I'm sure that they were somewhere between, you're a little girl, Heather. Are you sure? Is that they probably were really, because maybe, listen, I'm not sticking up for people who are lazy at their job or ham-fisted or whatever. But I wonder how many times you have to go through this rigmarole with people before you're just like, oh, let's just skip to the part where we tell them the baby's going to come flying out like a truck.
Right.
See if we can't get them to take care of themselves. I don't know.
Right.
It's a weird thing. I see both sides of it. If you take insulin or sulfonylureas, you are at risk for your blood sugar going too low. You need a safety net when it matters most. Be ready with Gvoke HypoPen. My daughter carries Gvoke HypoPen everywhere she goes because it's a ready-to-use rescue pen for treating very low blood sugar in people with diabetes ages 2 and above that I trust. Low blood sugar emergencies can happen unexpectedly, and they demand quick action. Luckily, Gvoke HypoPen can be administered in 2 simple steps, even by yourself in certain situations. Show those around you where you store Gvoke HypoPen and how to use it. They need to know how to use Gvoke HypoPen before an emergency situation happens. Learn more about why Gvoke HypoPen is in Arden's Diabetes Toolkit at gvokeglucagon.com/ Juicebox. Gvoke shouldn't be used if you have a tumor in the gland on the top of your kidneys called a pheochromocytoma, or if you have a tumor in your pancreas called an insulinoma. Visit gvokeglucagon.com/risk for safety information. I have always disliked ordering diabetes supplies. I'm guessing you have as well. It hasn't been a problem for us for the last few years, though, because we began using US Med. You can too. usmed.com/juicebox or call 888-721-1514 to get your free benefits check. US Med has served over 1 million people living with diabetes since 1996. They carry everything you need, from CGMs to insulin pumps and diabetes testing supplies and more. I'm talking about all the good ones, all your favorites. Libre 3, Dexcom G7, and pumps like Omnipod 5, Omnipod DASH, Tandem, and most recently, the iLet pump from Beta Bionics. The stuff you're looking for, they have it at US Med. 888-721-1514 or go to usmed.com/juicebox to get started now. Use my link to support the podcast. That's usmed.com/juicebox or call 888-721-1514.
And I think about how I would have thought back then. And I don't know, even if they did go through the list, to your point, that I would have been like, oh, this is a really big deal. I still probably would have been of the mindset of whatever I need to do, right, outside of taking metformin, I can do that.
Yeah.
Like I definitely had this, I can fix whatever thing that I don't have anymore. So yeah, I don't know if it would have mattered, to be honest. Now it does, but then I would have been like, okay, thanks.
Did you grow up in a house where people didn't go to the doctor?
So no, my parents, neither of them were very healthy. Like my dad had his first heart attack at 35 and his last one at 62. My mom passed away from DKA in 2019, but she was diagnosed as a type 2 in her 40s.
Really?
And of course, like I go over this in my head all the time now, which we'll never know. But I'm like, was she a type 2? Because she was on insulin. So she was on metformin plus a short and a long, and it was always a mess. And it was always blamed on her diet. And I think I supported ignorantly that thought process because at the time, I ignorantly thought type 2 was all diet related as well.
You were just like, Mom, you're just eating wrong. This is,
yes.
Yeah. You have guilt about that?
I do.
Yeah.
Especially now that I'm in that situation. It's a very lonely and isolating feeling.
Mm.
So I don't think me badgering her about like eating a Hershey Kiss in the past was relevant. Right?
Do you think now, like, oh my God, if somebody would talk to me like that, I'd be mortified?
Probably.
Yeah.
Like, really, I think I was more of like I don't want to say a tough love because she was my mom, but I was just like, Mom, we can fix this. Like, start implementing exercise, start eliminating this and that and that. Like, it was always, you can do X, Y, Z.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she did do some of them. Obviously, it didn't matter.
How long did she live with it?
So she passed away when she was 73. And so she was in her 40s when she was diagnosed type 2.
Okay.
I just remember I would always see her shaky. She was definitely always very moody that would come out of nowhere. Just lots of behaviors that now that, I know more about everything, I'm like, oh, that's what this all was.
Yeah.
And she just needed like help and guidance and someone to actually care for her appropriately on the medical side. And I don't think she received that because even when she went into DKA, she lived alone and I lived like 2 hours away. I was with her over the weekend and we would text a lot. So like that Monday I texted her, she said she wasn't feeling good. Tuesday I checked in. I didn't hear anything from her, which wasn't uncommon. But then Wednesday when I didn't hear from her, I felt uncomfortable and I'm like, something wrong. So I called her neighbor. I'm like, hey, can you run over? And that's when they found her. And even when they took her to the emergency room, and she had been there plenty of times before, and so they knew she had type 2 or type 1, whatever. They initially sent her for x-rays. She wasn't conscious, by the way. They sent her for x-rays because when they found her, she was on the floor. So it's like, I don't understand the protocol of you have an unconscious diabetic person. And our first concern is, did she break a bone? So, like,
there's this episode I have with an emergency room nurse. It's a cold wind, so she's anonymous. She's an emergency room nurse with type 1 diabetes who was witnessing another hospital employee, a medical issue. They were having a seizure from their type 1 diabetes. And they kept trying to send him out for a head CT. And she's like, his blood sugar's low. And like, she had to stand there and have an argument that she almost lost. Like, they almost just pushed the guy out the door to another place.
So scary.
I'm taken back to that conversation all the time because I remember her saying, I'd be safer having a seizure at your house, Scott, than in the hospital I work in.
That's so scary.
Yeah.
And that's something I'm terrified of as well.
Mhm.
I think everybody is. But anyway, so they, did their x-rays and it was fine. But then she passed away like a day later. And I think they said from like sepsis, but it was,
Your parents were both reasonably unwell through their life. Like, your dad had a heart attack when he was 35.
yeah. And yeah. So I think that was always my main motivation for always trying to be healthy. Like, I did not, so I'm saying this respectfully, because it sounds disrespectful, but I didn't want to end up like them. I was always into different sports. I enjoyed healthy eating. So it wasn't like I had to train myself to get there. That was just additional motivation of, this isn't going to be me because I got all the bases covered. I'm interested. I'm knowledgeable. Like, I don't need healthcare. I don't need anything because I got it. And so here we are.
Well, here we are. Like, I got it. Don't worry. I'll just get my diabetes later.
Yes.
So you're diagnosed type 2 initially, but about a month later, what happens? You get to the endo and they're like, you don't have type 2 diabetes. Is that pretty-
Well, so I got to tell the hospital story because it's at least disturbing to me. The morning of, I remember waking up and I threw up, and then I remember nothing from that point on until like, I have little pieces, but mostly not until a few days later. But so I guess after I threw up, I texted my friend and I just said, I need help. And so she came over because she's like, what's wrong with her? And so she took me to the hospital, but she said I was walking around getting my kids ready for school and that we dropped my kids off at school first, which I have no recollection of any of it. But anyway, so we get to the hospital. She checks me in, which I don't remember anything. I remember only twice that I had to go into the bathroom there to throw up. And it was like a public bathroom. So it was just like, it was gross. It was dirty. But we were there for 6 hours. So initially they took blood work when we got in there. And I don't remember that either. She said I was unconscious like the whole time. We were there for 6 hours. She kept going up and saying to the staff, she's like, my friend is dying. Like, can someone please see her? And they were just like, she'll be seen soon. It was just like that same old whatever.
Yeah.
So at one point she tries to get me out, and she had just had surgery on her knee. So it was like, she was struggling with trying to get unconscious me out the door when she was like kind of wobbling. And the gentleman that had taken my blood saw her taking me out, and he ran up to her and said, you can't take her home. She's dying. And she's like, no kidding. Are you going to see her? And he's like, I can't do anything about who gets seen. And so then she's like, well, then we're out of here. And so we went to a hospital, which literally was like 3 minutes away, thank God. And she said I was being taken up to an ICU room within 15 minutes.
Right.
So thank God she took me when she did. I just remember, because I'd lost all this weight.
Okay.
And for like months prior, I couldn't sleep because like my tailbone was sticking out. So I couldn't lay on my back. I couldn't lay on my side because like my hip bones were sticking out. I couldn't lay on my stomach because my pelvic bones, like I was just so uncomfortable for months. So they put this pad on my tailbone. And like, that's the last thing I remember. I was like, oh my God, I have some like comfort. It was the greatest feeling ever. I'm like, I can lay down without pain. I was there for several days, I think 6 in the ICU. And I just remember them on like maybe the day before I left saying that it was type 2. I was so sick. Like, I can't even describe like how sick I was. Like, I was just non-functional. It took me like almost 2 months before I could even physically lift my purse without like strain. Like, that's how weak and just, I was just a mess.
Yeah. Who was taking care of your kids during that time?
After I got home?
Well, no, like while your health is degrading, like, do you even remember those times?
So this is probably one of the scarier parts that I look back on. I feel like the first thing that went, at least for me, was my brain. Like, just the thought
Foggy.
process, the thought functions, because there's so much I don't remember. And then, so this all happened. I was finally diagnosed in March, right? That whole hospital episode. But in December, I started randomly falling asleep, but not realizing I had fallen asleep in the afternoons. And I would wake up to my kids saying, "Mom, where are you?" Because school was out and I picked them up. And that's what would wake me up. But I would have no recollection of any of that happening. And I remember not being able to, when you get out of the shower and you put the towel on your head to dry it off a little bit, I remember not being able to do that because my head hurt so much from that slight touching.
The pressure. Yeah. When my iron was very low, I couldn't lift my hands up to dry my hair. When my iron got really low.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But so it does scare me that there's so many things I don't remember. But when I was in the hospital, the friend that took me to the hospital took my kids. My kids are friends with her son. So for them, they were super excited. And I just left it at that place, right?
Yeah.
Just be excited. It's cool.
You're going to camp. Mommy's going to go die. Goodbye.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But so it was type 2. Even at that point, I just felt disappointment. I was thinking to myself, I don't have type 2. These people are nuts. I'm so sick. And I can't believe I'm now going to go home and I'm back to square one of, I have no idea what's wrong with me. I not once thought type 2.
So you thought there was something significantly wrong with you and they were telling you something that it wasn't.
Correct.
Okay.
I didn't believe them for 1 second.
Based on how you felt.
Yes.
Okay.
And I literally, and I'll never use this phrase outside of this again. I literally felt like I was dying for months. Every part of my body and my brain was saying, you were dying. And I remember my dog was constantly pawing at me to the point that I was like, what is wrong with our dog? It's he knew.
Yeah. He's like, I'm going to eat this lady when she dies.
I know.
Yeah. My God. Isn't that something your dog's trying to help you? And
yes.
Yeah. You're so sick that a dog is like, something's wrong with this one. And and doctors don't know.
It literally was constant.
Because you're skinny? By the way, because you're a thin person? You think that's the whole reason they're it's why would they not? Do you know what I mean? Why does the bullshit of, oh, you're thin, it's okay, not make somebody go, I mean, if that's their mindset, then why don't they go, oh, you're thin, this isn't type 2? You know what I mean? If they're willing to make a bullshit leap because of the size of your body for one reason, but not for the other.
I agree. I think it's all laziness. I think it's complacentness. I really, and that's been my experience. It's just, it's lazy. And I when people are like, oh, they're so busy. Well, what are they busy doing? Because it's not patient care. They're generating income. They're busy generating income, but it's not patient care because my story is far from unique.
Yeah.
I've listened to tons of very similar stories on the podcast. It's lazy. And I don't know why we all accept it. And I think we accept it because what the heck else are we supposed to do?
Well, yeah.
What are we going to do?
Right. Because the other side of it is they're also just people. And you know what I mean?
Right.
They're in an imperfect system and they're not perfect people and everything else that goes along with being human is involved. But you would think that in a world that's so, I mean, listen, look at what I hate to talk like this, but look what our computers can accomplish, right? We're shooting, I don't know, rockets to space stations and bringing them back again. And cars are driving themselves. And, an algorithm can pretty much do anything. It can control your blood sugar through a thing that a guy in Russia made in an app. And I, don't know the first thing about gestational diabetes, but by typing the sentence, what happens to a baby of a gestational mother if the mother has high blood glucose, I got the complete and utter breakdown of what happens in literally a split second. You'd think we'd be able to figure out how to triage people more accurately.
I know.
That's all I'm saying.
But it gets better with that hospital, even though I appreciate that they did save my life because they did, right?
Of course, yeah.
And I think we all go back and forth. ERs are meant to keep you from dying, right? They're not technically meant to diagnose, right? It's just to stabilize you. So I do appreciate that they saved my life. However, so the day I was leaving is when I assume it was a diabetes educator came in, but I'm not really sure. And she gave me, the pamphlets of like, a quarter of a bagel is 15 carbs, blah, blah, blah. Like things I was just like, is this lady talking about and why?
Mm-hmm.
And then she whispered to me and said, you're not type 2, you have type 1. You need to see an endo. And she handed me a piece of paper where she wrote down like 5 different endos and said, I ranked them from who I recommend best to least.
Wow.
Like, good luck. And she was kind of like, be quiet. And I was still like, this lady's nuts. Like, not type 2, but I'm definitely not type 1.
Yeah, and you don't know the world that she understands. She's like, listen, you were just misdiagnosed. I'm trying to save your life. Take this paper. And you're like, okay, crazy person.
Yep.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah.
Yep. Thank God for her, right?
Mm-hmm.
But so, all they make you do as an adult is, stick the needle in your stomach. And as long as you can do that, then you're good to go. And like, that's literally it. So there's no directions, advice, nothing.
Right.
It was just, as long as you can poke your stomach with the needle, you can leave now. And I remember specifically asking about because they told me I would have prescriptions for 2 insulins and how I was supposed to do that. And they were like, the instructions will be with the prescription. So I'm like, okay. So my friend takes me to pick them up. The long acting makes sense. It's 20 units once a day. But then for the short acting, it says, take 1 unit as needed. Like that's literally what it said. So it's like, it's so disturbing to me.
Yeah, when you look back at it, you're like, what does that mean? Yeah.
Because there's no scenario where that's an appropriately written prescription.
Right.
Do you agree? I'm just
yeah. No, I mean,
what?
The person were to say to you, look, we put a generic placeholder in the script because we don't know what to say yet, because we don't have your insulin to carb ratio. We're not sure if you're honeymooning. We don't know any of that stuff. Like, and these are things you're not going to understand yet, but that's why you're going to go right to an endocrinologist and get it all worked out. Like, but no, as needed. So that's then up to you to go, okay, well, here's a unit. Is that what's been,
I called the hospital when I got home. So I'm like, I don't know what this means. Like, when would I know when I need it? And of course, they're like, well, you're not a patient here anymore. You need to talk to your PCP.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this was like a Friday afternoon, of course. So then I don't even think I called them until Monday. And then, of course, they were like, well, we didn't prescribe you that. We can't tell you how you should take it.
Just passing the buck everywhere, right?
It was.
Yeah.
And I'm still so sick at this point. And I'm just like, all right, I don't even believe these people anyway. I'll just take this 1 unit when I eat. This is so funny when I think back on some of this now, because like when I got home, like our neighborhood did like a meal train just to help. So I didn't have to cook dinner for the kids. It was either the first or second day I was home. Someone had just ordered pizza for us. And so I was still very much starving, right? Like I could eat all day long, every day, like 5,000 calories. I still need more food. And I remember eating like 6 pieces of pizza, and I took 1 unit of insulin for it.
That's about right. About as needed. Are you wearing a CGM? No, right?
No, they didn't send me home with that. There was this is funny too. So it was just, with the glucometer, they didn't say anything. Like, I have to preface by saying, like, they provided no information, and I was sick. I have to keep saying I was really, really sick.
Yeah.
So I would check, like, I think it said check 4 times a day. I don't remember exactly what it said of how many times to check, but I would check and it would just say hi. And I remember calling the pharmacy and saying, my glucometer's wrong because it's not reading numbers. It's just reading words. And they literally just said, bring it back. We'll replace it. And I'm like, okay, thank you. So my friend goes and picks up a new one, brings back the next one. Next time I check it, it's the same thing. I'm like, can't believe this one's broken too. Like, it's not reading a number. Mm-hmm. And literally I replaced 3 until I finally looked at the directions or Googled. I don't even remember what I did because my brain wasn't thinking.
Heather, I hope this makes you feel better that the in the middle of the night we realized we thought Arden had diabetes, and I went down to a 24-hour pharmacy, and I got a glucose meter. We brought it back and didn't really know how to do it. And we opened it up, put it together, and checked Arden's blood sugar. And when it said hi, I said out loud, oh, it's so nice it says hello to you before it gives you the number. And my wife's like, hold on, dummy. Let me see that. And so she looks in the book. She goes, I think that means her blood sugar is over 500. And I was
Oh my
like,
God.
oh, okay. And then we just packed up and we went to the hospital like in the middle of the night. But I literally said those words. So I don't want you to feel bad because I wasn't sick. So I was just dumb and didn't know what I was talking about.
Because you don't know, right?
How
like
would
you
I
don't know.
Yeah. But I thought like, well, what a lovely medical device. It's like, hello, how are you? I'm going to give you your number in a second. Hold on. They don't do that. I love that you returned how many? 3 of them?
Yeah. And like nobody questioned me. And I literally kept saying, it's just saying words. Nobody was like, well, what word is it saying? Like, no. Yeah. No, I was like, here you go.
Well, so your story just outlines all the gaps in how things are set up. Like how many different times and how many different ways somebody can be dropped. And then, I mean, I love that you call back the hospital and you're like, hey, I have a question. Like, you're not a patient here anymore. But you're like, you told me this. And it's like, oh, that part's over now. Go talk to somebody else. Well, who? You know what I mean? Like, and what is as needed? And, you know, like, and insulin, by the way, is really dangerous. So, like, what if you decided 1 unit as needed meant every 15 minutes?
Right.
Like, you wouldn't have known. Although in the case of 6 slices of pizza, that might have been appropriate. But Jesus, yeah, isn't that crazy? It's just crazy. How does it get to the point where you are now? Like, what ends up happening that you figure things out?
I mean, definitely the podcast.
Like, but how do you find that?
So I can't remember. I remember Googling because I wasn't feeling physically any better because I was taking 1 unit as needed, right? Like,
wait a minute. How long did you do that for? That's so funny.
Like a month.
By the way, this is not funny, but it is kind of hilarious. So, and you have the right attitude to talk about it this way. So for a month, you're just like, how about now, unit?
I mean, Christ. I would eat, and I was still eating like, and I know everybody manages differently, but I was still eating all day long. Like I was starving still because I was still wasn't doing anything to feel better because I didn't know what to do. But yeah, it was like a month and I felt terrible. And I think I started Googling just for like diabetes type 1 groups on Facebook in my area that I lived. And then I think that one came up on a thread of another group, the Juicebox one. So I'm like, oh, I'll check that out.
The randomness it takes
to help. It was very random.
Yeah, to help yourself is I find that very frustrating.
But then I didn't start listening to the podcast right away. I started just reading posts. And I'm like, like pre-bolus and like correction factors. And, you know, I'm like, what is all of this? And of course I was terrified. And I actually still am. Yeah. I'm like a very insecure type 1 still.
Well, you're very new. I mean, I don't see a reason why you should feel completely confident. Like it's a year and a half.
Good. That makes me feel better.
Yeah,
yes.
No, hell, I was still crying at 2 years. Don't you worry. And I didn't even have diabetes. This is my kid. I also didn't have a podcast to listen to, but that's neither here nor there. I was like literally still crying in the shower 2 years into it. You know, so
the endo that I see, I have a lot of negative things to say about them, but when I did get in there, at least I got a CGM and they gave me the generic, you know, correction factor 50 and carb ratio of 15. So that at least gave me a starting point, which I didn't have, right?
Okay.
So I'm grateful for that. I do know at my 6-month appointment, after listening to a lot of episodes, I asked if they would help me, you know, dial in my ratios. And they had told me that at that point, this was my 6-month appointment, that I had been diabetic long enough and that I could just figure it out. I'm like,
You can make those adjustments, Heather, as needed.
It drives me nuts because like I have a high deductible and the visits are like $350.
Holy Christ.
And then they have an extra charge for downloading my data of $50.
I love that.
Which they've only ever gone over with me once.
We're going to change your tires. Do you want these lug nuts back on? Because that's going to be an extra charge.
Right.
Like, how could you charge someone to download their data?
It's $50.
I want, just real quickly, Heather, this just isn't for you, obviously. This is for other people listening. You're all scumbags. I just want to say, I mean, like, anyone who's doing that, like, just be fucking ashamed of yourselves. Like, you're taking $350 off this lady to tell her, hey, you can do it yourself. And by the way, give me $50 more to download your meter. Like, and then not to help you with it.
Correct.
Pieces
100% accurate.
Absolute pieces of shit. Anybody who would do that to you.
I know. But like, that's where you get trapped, right? Because we need them for refills. So they provide me no service. They don't.
Yeah.
Other than they give me a prescription that they are so conservative with too that I always have to ask. I remember, like, I'm on a pump now, but when I was still MDI, they didn't even write it enough that I could prime my pen as many times as I used it a day. And I remember asking them to increase it. And they gave me a really hard time about it, making me almost feel like I'm a junkie or something. It's like, what else would I be doing with this insulin? Like, I don't understand.
I think I'm squirting it around the room like fireworks. Right. Like, it's funny you said junkie, because I thought this is like an 80s drug movie where the drug dealer makes fun of the guy buying the drugs. Like, you mean I got to stand here and take this clowning on me before I can get my heroin? and they're like, here, give us $50. Thank you. All right, here's your insulin. Yeah. I don't know, man. Like, the whole world's upside down. Like, see, every time I have these conversations, I'm inclined to say I see both sides, but then at some point I think, no, I don't see their side as much. I know it's just people, and that a person who becomes a nurse is no different or better than a person who becomes a school teacher or the guy that comes and gets your, I don't know, does your dry cleaning. Like, like everyone's people. You'll get good ones and you'll get bad ones. And you'll get people who are very inclined to help people and to do a great job no matter what. And then you'll get people who are just like, I got this job. I wonder how long I can not do it before someone fires me. Like, those people exist too, right. in every walk of life. Just like, they don't care. They're not really trying to add to the greater good of anything. And those people are sometimes doctors too, and then you get enough people together and it gets into a system. It's like, hey, it turns out I can, I don't have to work that hard and I make a good living. And, Heather's alive. She figured it out, so, hey, we all win.
We do.
I have a Porsche and Heather's alive.
Right?
Jesus Christ. I don't know. I just think there's a minimum. Just do your fucking job.
Right. Like I don't expect them to care about me. Like, I don't. I think that's romanticizing a business.
Yeah, of course.
I expect them to do their jobs. That's it. You don't have to like me. You don't have to look me in the eye, which they usually don't. They don't even usually look at me. They just update things on their laptop. And then, that's it. And then I'll go into my chart and I'll read, it's like 5 pages of notes of they checked my feet and they did this and they did that, which none of that even happened. And I'm like, what is this?
No one looked at your feet, but they wrote it down?
It's written on every one of my visit notes. They've never once looked at my feet. Never once.
I swear, I don't have anything bad to say about the children's hospital that Arden went to. I really don't. The visits where we'd go in there, where they'd let me check your sites. And they would just kind of palpate a little bit to see if there was any spaces, maybe don't inject here anymore. Don't put your pump here or something like that. They just they push in her belly a little bit. How's your belly feel? Does that hurt? No. Okay. Well, then there we go. And so you pushed on her belly and you touched where you said, oh, you're doing a good job rotating. That's good. You're doing great. Everything's great. How are you? And Arden's like, I'm 8. You know what I mean? I play softball and I go to school and I'm not dead. So I guess I'm good. This is it, huh? This is the visit. I had to fight with them to give her thyroid medication. We don't medicate that number. I said, well, you do with my kid. But I had to do that. I got him up to I don't think this is enough. You need to look at T3 for her, maybe fight. She grows. The thyroid medication's not enough now. Arden starts having issues where they're looking at her heart. This goes back a number of years. Not one person ever said, hey, she had these thyroid symptoms. We put her on this thyroid medication. She gained 30 pounds and we never moved up her dose. But these could be thyroid symptoms. Instead, they've got us scared out of our minds, seeing a cardiologist. It took my wife and I to go, do you think it's possible she just needs some more Synthroid because she gained weight? And then we couldn't get them to agree to that. So, by the way, Heather, not for nothing, I started knocking pills into little pieces and giving her extra. I made her symptoms go away. And then I went back to the doctor and I said, well, here's the thing I did. And now you help me figure out how we should actually be doing it. Because I gave her extra this Synthroid and all this went away. There's no moment where they go, hey, I'm really sorry for making you drive across the state to see a a
Right.
cardiologist and scare the fuck out of you that your kid had a heart issue. And I didn't listen to you when you mentioned the thing about this Synthroid. But now that you've figured out that it works, I'd be happy to adjust the dose and pretend like none of this ever happened.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, it's so much pressure because none of us are physicians, right? Like, and I personally don't have the capacity to figure out a lot of this, but we're all kind of forced to.
Oh, to the point where I don't want to say where I was because it kind of gives something away for another person, and which I don't think is right. I was with a healthcare professional for something recently. It was more personal, and they have no idea what I do for a living, which is to say they don't know I make a podcast, and they don't know anything about me. And we were talking, and like it was a meal thing, and going on and on a little bit. There's a number of people there, and eventually this doctor turns to me and he goes, "Hey, I'm so sorry. I don't know what you do. You're a doctor, right?" And I was like, "No." And he goes, "You're not in the medical field? You're a nurse? And I'm like, and he's just like looking at me like blank. And I was like, "I make a podcast?" And he starts laughing. He goes, "I thought you were a doctor." And I'm like, "I'm passing as a doctor in this conversation?" Be very clear, Heather. That says nothing good about me. That says something very scary about doctors. I almost didn't graduate from high school, Heather. I want to be very, very, very clear. There was like 2 months at the end where I was like, "Oh my God, I'm not going to graduate." Then I did not go to college, and I'm sitting with a group of professionals. One of them is a learned physician who thinks I'm a doctor. There's your problem. Yeah, fix that.
I know.
Yeah. Jesus
But
Christ.
I mean, I think we'd all take advice from the podcast members, right? Before, at least I would. I have. I'm better because of that community. It's listening to the different episodes. It's looking at different posts. And a lot of them are geared towards kids, but I still read them. And I'm like, oh, should I try that? Oh, I'm going to do this. And like, sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
But everything came from there. The only thing I got from the medical community was 15 and 50, right? Eat 45 carbs.
Oh, 15. Eat 15 carbs, wait 15 minutes if you're low.
Oh, I got that too. Yeah.
Oh, no. What are you saying?
So like it was the generic, like my correction factor was 50 and my carb ratio was 15. And then from there, it was just figure it out from yourself, which it's like 32 and 7.
You know what's interesting? Jenny and I did these 3 episodes called The Math Behind, where we had these like conversations about, about like what the starting math is to figure out somebody's carb ratio, for example. And it's this very basic thing that, doctors and practitioners do behind your back in the office, where they're like, you look over and you think they're wizards. And then they come back and they say, let's start with 1 unit for this. It's like, it's this simple, like, it's just this simple mathematical formula. How much do you weigh?
Right now, I weigh 124.
Okay. What should the hourly basal rate be for a 124-pound female with type 1 diabetes?
I like that you went there because I have a little story with that.
Okay. Oh, trust me. I don't know what I'm doing. It's all just off the top of my head. Let's see. This is just Chat GPT. It's not connected to anything. Let's see what it figures out. Highly individualized. Even it's covering its ass.
Wow.
Hold on a second. Oh, so here it is. Total. A common starting point is the estimate the total daily insulin requirements for adults. A rough estimate is 0.5 to 0.7 units per kilogram of body weight per day. Typical basal insulin accounts for about 40 to 50%, blah, blah. So this thing's going to, if you asked this thing enough questions and then filled in like, oh, well, this is, my total daily insulin and went on and on, it would give you the answer that you needed. Like it would divide the daily. It's walking me through right now how to figure this out. And so there are people running around all over the world whose settings are way off. And then they go to a doctor and say, like, how do I adjust this? And the doctor's like, I don't know. You've had diabetes for 6 months now. You figure it out.
I know.
Like, I can ask the magic box and it explains the whole thing. Like, my endo can't do it.
I know.
Just tell me you want to get back to TikTok. Like, seriously, just have the nerve to say to me, listen, that sounds like a lot of work and it's almost lunchtime. So why don't you go figure it out? It just, I don't know. All right, what's your story? What did that just make you think of?
It's not really a story, but my endo was always very focused on how much I weighed in the beginning, because when I would ask to change the prescription because I would run out or be close to running out, you're taking too much insulin for your body. It was always because of your body weight. So there must be some sort of calculation somewhere that equates, right? That has some generic setting to how much you weigh.
Yeah.
For months, that was that. No, you don't weigh enough to take that much insulin.
Well, is it possible I have insulin resistance? Is it possible that I have PCOS? Is it possible that I'm eating like really poorly? Like, do you want to ask more questions or just say that and then pass me out of here again?
Right.
Like, again, nobody, it's the rest of this. Heather, I used to say this more than I say it now. It's what we don't say that's important. You know what I mean? Like, there's more. Like, you just said something great. What's the rest of it?
Right.
Like, that's where the answer is. Like, what's the rest of it? And no one knows. I don't want to, like, listen, there are people who know. I'm not going to say there aren't people who know. But, like, for the most part, really think about this. How many people do you really trust?
I know.
How many people in the course of your life do you meet and go, there's a person, ride or die, end of the world, I'm going with that one. You don't meet that many people like that. So I've built these calculators that I have not had the nerve to put out into the public yet. And I don't know if I'm going to. But like, for example, it'll help you with your figure out your insulin sensitivity. It can help you. It explains the whole thing to you. What's your total daily dose? Do you know how much insulin you use a day?
Yeah, it's roughly like 32 units.
Like 32 units.
Yeah.
So is do you know what your insulin sensitivity is set at? I
have it at 7.
You think 1 unit moves you 7 points?
Oh, I'm sorry. For like the correction factor, I have it at 32. Sorry.
Okay. So this thing thinks it's like 56 based on your total daily insulin. But I don't know if that's right or not. And that's why I'm not like moving these out into the world yet.
Well, and I don't eat a lot. So I think that like I'm not a 50-50.
Yeah. Okay. So then there's an example where it just wouldn't work for you. And that's why I don't think it's okay to put these out there. But like people could, like, tell me your total daily again. Was it 32?
Yeah, it's roughly 32.
And your 1 unit moves you how much for insulin to carb ratio?
My carb ratio is 7.
7. And you find these numbers to be very accurate for you?
I do.
Good.
I actually think the correction factor could be a little lower, to be honest.
Lower, like one covers 9 or one covers 5?
Like
more,
5.
More aggressive.
Yeah.
So
more aggressive. I think there's no reason to feel this way, but I think a lot of people do. Like if I would go lower, it's like some mental thing. Like the reason I don't eat a lot is because I have this mental thing in my head about like, I never want to take more than 5 units at a time. Like if I take more than 5 units, it's catastrophic. Like it's.
Why do you feel that way?
I think like a lot of people, but they handle it better. Like I'm scared of like something wacky happening, right? Which I realize like of going low. And I realize if I'm going low, I have the tools and the knowledge to keep myself safe and everything will be fine. Mm-hmm. But then you'll read those posts of like, there was no reason. I dropped to 32 out of nowhere. And I'm like, oh my God, like I have to prepare. and in my head, it's all make believe. Like none of this is based on reality at all. In my head, I can manage something going wacky if it's only like 5 units or 4 units. But if we go beyond that, then it would just be completely unmanageable.
Okay. I mean, I don't not understand your fear. That's, so what do? Eat lower carb for that reason?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I could go a lot of places with food.
Were you lower carb prior to diabetes?
No.
There's
a little, yeah.
So you have a fear of getting low. And so you're trying to work with like, I'll use less insulin. It'll give me less chance of getting low.
That's part of it. That's a big part of it.
What's the rest of it?
I mean, the other part of it is I hate food now. Like if I could never eat again, I would happily not do so.
Tell me more about that.
Because it's requiring me, right? Even if my settings are completely correct, it's still requiring me to do something, right? That hopefully I get it right. But if I don't, then I'm going to have to eat a stupid gummy or I'm going to have to, it requires management, right?
You feel judged by the outcome or you insulted that you need to do it?
I feel annoyed by it. I feel overwhelmed by it is probably a better word. Like I would just like to eat lunch and just eat lunch. Like I'm just going to eat whatever it is. And I'm going to go on about my day instead of, oh, did I get this wrong? Oh, I must have been stressed out right before I ate because now it's going up. And like, how long should I wait before I do it? Like all of that.
You don't want to think about that.
No. And I obsess about it all day long.
Anxious or just think about it a lot?
Yeah. So it's like I'm anxious about lows, but I'm also anxious about, I want to be no higher than 120 ever. Like I want to just kind of be in the 80 to 100 all the time because I feel like there's been, and I don't know any of this. This is all fabricated in my head, but I feel like there's no way I don't have an incredible amount of damage to my body from like 10 plus years of being undiagnosed. Like I don't see how it's possible.
I bet.
Yeah.
Listen, if your blood sugars are 114 for 10 years, it's not optimal, but I don't think you're in trouble.
No, but who knows what it was, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I know I have to like let it go. And I do believe like your body wants to heal.
Yeah, I was going to say, where's your hippie stuff? Where'd that go?
It's there. It's still there. But I do believe that like our bodies want to be well.
I know what you're saying, but saying it that way is like hilarious.
Is it?
Yeah, I don't know. It sounds like we've been smoking weed all afternoon and we're talking about berberine.
See, this is what I should do. And then maybe I could relax and just eat and like.
Feels like we're in Colorado around a campfire and you're like, yo, man, just take more vitamin B. You know about methylation? like. But I totally understand what you mean. Like, I mean, and your body does try to heal itself. Like, right? It is trying to, you remake cells and things can get better. Of course, sometimes those duplicate incorrectly, but, for the most part, we get cut, we heal, etc. Listen, it's important to note that I don't know what I'm talking about, but I'd be surprised if you had long-term problems from that first couple of years of that slow onset. Like, I mean, I'd bet for you being okay if I had to bet some money.
All right, I'll go with that.
I could also be completely wrong, but maybe you should just take some berberine and see what that does. Or have you tried milk thistle?
No,
I'm just kidding.
Maybe I should.
You probably shouldn't. But no, listen. Not that there's not some great stuff going on, like with supplements. And I take some supplements that I'm sure people would laugh at me for. It's certainly not a thing I would worry about.
Yeah. I got a lot I got to stop worrying about because I know it's not helpful. It's just hard.
Do you want a slice of pizza or are you happy eating the way you're eating?
I don't want a slice of pizza because I don't want to deal with it.
No, I didn't ask if you wanted to deal with it. I asked you if you wanted a slice of pizza. like if it wasn't anything to deal with, would you want it?
Yes.
So you're restricting yourself to avoid the other thing.
Yes.
And that's making
100%.
Is that making you upset?
I'm upset that it exists in my life. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it changing your life in bad ways?
The food or just the whole thing?
The decision-making tree that you're in.
Like I am not as strong, I think, as a lot of people on this podcast because I'm very unhappy and I can be dark a lot of times about all of this. Like I'm amazed when I see people that I know how much time and effort and everything that they put into managing it, and they still have a really good attitude. Like it amazes me because I am angry, I'm bitter. I feel like I have this very diseased body that I can't fix. Yeah, all of it.
I hear what you're saying.
Awful.
I hear what you're saying. Have you thought about therapy to try to work through it?
So I went to one hesitantly last year, and it was so unhelpful. And like she didn't even know what to say.
You're like, I'm bitter and I feel like I'm in a broken body, and she's like, yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was because like I could tell her, I'm like, but I'm also grateful for, and I could name 100 things, and that's the truth. Like I'm grateful for all these things, and I also like despise everything about my life right now. Like, and it's an equal, and I think that's where they get stuck. They're like, oh,
would it be helpful, like to just be able to voice it with somebody else who would come along and say, hey, I feel bitter too?
I think so. I mean, there's not like a I think there's something to be said about like camaraderie, right?
Yeah.
Even though it's like, well, with type 1, but there isn't the supports out there for adults. I think just because everybody's doing their own thing. Do you know what I mean? Like if there was a freaking adult camp, I'd be like, sign me up.
There is an
like,
adult
I'll
camp.
go.
Yeah, there's an adult camp.
There is?
Yeah, it's called Connected in Motion. It's a Canadian thing, but they come into the U.S. in a couple of places.
Oh,
yeah, you can
I'm going to have to look into that.
Connected in Motion.
Connected in Motion.
Yeah. I, by the way, said that out loud, even though someone was on here once and said, oh my God, I'd love for you to speak at a Connected in Motion thing. I'm going to go talk to people. And then no one got back to me. And I'm still saying Connected in Motion, Connected in Motion. So you're welcome, even though apparently you don't want me there. Meanwhile, I don't know if the guy ever actually asked or not, but still funny to say. What I'm thinking is if there's a soft spot in community for type 1 adults, I think it's this. I think that when you get a bunch of people together and they're both children or parents of and adults with, and you put them all in the same place, they clearly have significantly different perspectives, based on their age and their experiences, but even based on when they're diagnosed. And even though I think an adult can take a lot from a conversation with a caregiver, and I think a caregiver could take a lot from a conversation with an adult, I think what ends up happening sometimes is that parents can get very, I don't know what the word is, like defensive, or they don't want to talk about bad things happening because right now they're in the part where they're like, if I figure this out, nothing bad's going to happen. And they don't want to hear from somebody who's like, I feel bitter, because they don't want to think their kid's going to feel bitter. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, 100%. And I've actually thought a little bit about that with like my kids. And I can confidently say that if it was my kids, I'd be like, we got this. Like, you don't have anything to worry about. I will always have your back. We will get through this. Like, and I feel confident saying that. I don't know why it gets twisted when it's yourself.
I don't. Well, first of all, I want to say I understand how parents feel. And if you're in a group with, my group's huge. It's 51,000 active people, and so I get it if you're like talking about like, how do we get this right and blah, blah, blah. And then like one 35-year-old like wizened person comes in and they're like, we're all going to die. Like, you know what I mean? Like you're just like, like putting on digital black eyeliner and they're just like, listen, man, give up. Like it's like you're like, I don't want to hear this, right? And that is just that is an end of one situation from one person's experience. But also there's other people that feel like that, and it would be nice if they could all get together and go, I feel bitter and I don't want to feel this way, because you don't want to feel that way.
Correct.
Right.
I don't.
Yeah. So it's tough because a support group would be really valuable. I don't know if I'm supposed to say this out loud or not. What am I going to do? The group experts in my Facebook group mostly have type 1 diabetes, or their kid does, right? And these are just lovely people who are donating their time to answering questions in the Facebook group. And mostly what they do is they're like, hey, check out this episode, or you should try Bold Beginnings, or have you tried the Pro Tip series? How about these variables? Like, it's a very nice thing they do in their free time, but they have a chat where they can talk privately. So they can say like, hey, I just reported a post, or, can somebody get a message? I'm not in that chat, by the way. And very purposely, I'm not involved in it on purpose, so that they can feel free to talk and, have camaraderie with each other. And I hear back through people that is maybe the best type 1 diabetes support group in the world, is that those 15 people in that chat.
Oh, interesting.
I've really toyed with learning more about WhatsApp and starting maybe a WhatsApp group for people with diabetes, and letting there be an adult WhatsApp chat, and maybe let it be more specific. But I got to learn. I'm literally in the middle of learning about it right now, because would that be nice if you could go on the Facebook group and go, oh my God, there's a WhatsApp chat for adult women who were diagnosed later, or very specific genres of people that you could jump into. Would you find that valuable?
I would.
You would?
Yes.
Okay. All right. What have we not talked about here, Heather, that we should have?
Well, my kids, we could throw, you want to throw that in?
They're identical. They're already special, but sure, let's talk about it. What is there been, you're not married, is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. And that been for a while or never?
Yes.
Okay.
Always.
I was going to say, because I didn't dig into it because it wasn't our path, but 38 twins in vitro?
No.
No?
So it was a surprise. It was a really good, amazing, best thing in my life surprise.
That, by the way, your voice jumped 3 octaves there. You're like, oh, just in case the kids hear this. It was a lovely surprise. It didn't happen after a bar crawl, if that's what you're asking.
It did not.
Okay,
it did not.
Good.
No. But yeah, it's just been the 3 of us. So, I mean, I think that's some of my anxiety with all of this.
You don't want to die and leave 2 young kids behind? Is that your thinking?
100%.
And your parents both dropped out early.
Correct.
And at the moment, you look like you could go before them.
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's occurred to you, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's what terrifies me is like, they're going to come home and find me dead. Anyway, whatever.
Like, just like,
I mean, it's just like,
that's probably not going to happen. Which, by the way, that's probably not going to happen. You're stuck because you found your mom basically over the phone. You know what I mean? Like yeah. And I'd like to point out she was 23 years older than you are and not in great health. You're probably in better health with type 1 diabetes than your mom was without it.
Probably. I actually don't disagree with that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's definitely, she lived alone. I live alone. I'm like, ugh. Anyway, so with them, I quickly did that trial net after I was diagnosed.
Okay.
And, everything was negative, blah, blah, blah. And then months later, I think they were asking me, like, does it hurt when you check your blood sugar? And I'm like, no, it doesn't hurt at all, blah, blah, blah. Trying to make it like normal for them, right? And so I'm like, here, I'll do you. You can see it. That's cool. You get to see your number, blah, blah, blah. Check both of them. They're both like 120 something. I don't remember what it was. And this was first thing in the morning. And so, like, of course, like all the other parents, right? Because I've seen all these posts too, and I can relate to them. I instantly panic. I'm like, go wash your hands, come back. So they wash your hands, come back. It's the same. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. So then I call the PCP, like, can you please order antibody tests again, C-peptide? And she's like, no, there's no reason to. And I'm like, look, this is what I just did. Please do this. I have a deductible. I'm paying for it anyway. And she's like, I can't do that. And I'm like, well, what can you do? And she's like, well, I can order an A1C. And I was upset because I'm like, it's not going to be high, but fine, whatever.
Fair enough. Yeah.
So we get them and they're both 5.8. And I'm like, oh my God.
Wait, what the hell? Are you telling me your kids have diabetes?
I'm not there yet.
All right. Jeez, Heather, way to hold this cat in the bag past the first hour.
Right?
Hold on. Let me just tell Rob now. Go ahead. Charge me overtime. I know. Go ahead. There's editing overtime coming my way. Don't worry about it. Go ahead, Heather. What do you got? Go ahead.
So I was like, she's like, oh, it's 5.8. They're fine. Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, that's not fine. Like, what are we talking about? And my kids aren't overweight and they don't eat. I don't want to sound ignorant. I'd like to take that comment back.
Yeah, it wouldn't matter how much they weighed or what they ate if their A1C is higher or not. Like, it's just is. Yeah, their pancreas is either doing its job or it's not.
Right.
Yeah.
And it clearly wasn't, but she's like, it's fine. And I'm like, no. I'm like, can you please order these other labs? And she's like, well, I don't know how to interpret them. I'm like, they're either positive or negative. I'm like, there's not much more you can do with them.
By the way, if you don't know how to interpret them, why am I paying you?
Right? It's they either have the antibiotics or they don't. But anyway, so then I just tried to get into an endo, which of course they were like, without a referral, blah, blah, blah. So then I had to beg the PCP again. I'm like, can you please send whatever these endos want? So the endo was at USF. So, and I purposely chose that. I'm like, we'll be in good hands here, blah, blah, blah. So then they do run the antibody labs and only one of them comes back with one positive. And it was the zinc one, the Z8 thing.
Okay.
And the other one comes back with none of them positive. But it's just sitting out in, the My Chart thing for 2 weeks. Like I saw it and got the notification. I was devastated, right? I was devastated. 2 weeks. I heard nothing from them. So then I finally send them a message. I'm like, hey, I'm a little disappointed. This is devastating. I've heard from no one. Like, what are the next steps? Because I was surprised too, because I hear a lot of really positive stories from the pediatric endos. And I'm like, well, how did I choose the bad one again? But so anyway, she's basically like, nothing you can do, watch and wait. we'll send a script for a glucometer. Like, that was it. Like,
would you like,
I'm not kidding.
Would you like a free meter? We'll get
and I'm like, this can't be watch and wait.
What happens?
So then I look on the list that is on the site of recommended endos.
Juiceboxdocs.com. Undervalued resource. But yes, I know what you're talking about. Go ahead.
And so I go to one that's listed there. And it was just, we did a telehealth to make it the appointment sooner.
Mm-hmm.
She spent the first 20 minutes. So it was, we're on, the Zoom. Both my kids are here. She spent the first 20 minutes basically accusing me of like Munchausen. Like, why would you ever check your kid's blood sugar? Like, that's totally unacceptable. Why would you do that? And I'm trying to explain to her like how it happened. It was very innocent. They were curious. I want them to feel normal when they see me doing it.
Yeah. And
she wouldn't let it go. So then I'm like, listen, this is what happened to me. Like, everybody ignored me. Then I almost died. Here I am. And she's like, oh, all right. Like, this was one of the recommended ones though.
I don't know what to tell you. Everybody sucks.
They do. But then she continues to say, that's not even the worst part. She says in front of my kids that I likely passed this to them in my placenta while I was pregnant. She said this to the three of us.
Wait, past what? A higher A1C?
Type 1.
Type 1. Oh.
Yes.
Oh, that's not how that works, but okay.
So my one son starts to cry.
Yeah, because he's like, why in the did I ask to have my blood sugar checked? That's what the guy was like, why did I say, does that hurt? This was really the start of a bad decision-making tree for me. Oh, my God. Yeah, so your kid, how old? He's like 11, 10?
They're 11, so they're already getting to the point where, right, they're starting to be teens, and I'm not cool anymore, and like I suck for a variety of reasons. Mm-hmm. So now this lady's telling them I've just given them, like, this chronic condition. I'm just looking at her, and I'm like, never heard that before. And she's like, oh, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
She was pregnant, too. She was pregnant.
I don't know what that means, but okay, good.
Just that she should at least know something.
I see. Like, maybe she should, like, have
a pregnant endo.
Yeah.
But anyway.
A prendo. She's a prendo. Let's go with that. Okay.
And then she just started talking about, like, the 45 carbs, or maybe it was 60, because I don't listen to any of this. So I'm just like, all right. And then she's like, we need to refer you to weight management. And I was just like,
wait, for the kids?
Yes.
Are they overweight?
No, my kids are very skinny. My kids are 70 pounds and they're 11 years old. They've always been skinny though. So it's not like a recent.
Did she want them to put weight on? I don't understand.
I don't know, because I didn't ask, because like at that point, right, like I was done. So it was like, whatever she said, like the respect was lost. So whatever she said, I didn't care and didn't feel that it was valid in any way.
Mm-hmm. Well, where are we now? Where are we now with the kids?
So back to USF, and the one actually has an appointment coming up in a couple of weeks. So I've been randomly checking, and the one that did not test positive for any of the antibodies, his are always below 100, like before meals, after meals, like it seems fine. Mm-hmm. The other one, it's not been anything over 140, but it's certainly a difference from his brother.
Fasting 140s?
No. So the highest fasting has been like 130 something. I mean, close enough, I guess.
I don't think you should be able to wake up in the morning with a 130 blood sugar, though.
I don't disagree with you.
Yeah, that sounds janky to me. I think he's the one you're looking at, like need to be paying attention to.
Yeah, and he's the one that's going.
Right. Well, first of all, let me say I'm sorry if that's what ends up happening. I feel poorly if that's what's happening, but I'm glad you caught it and that you're ahead of it. It sucks that this is what happens when you try to go to doctors over and over. Even the ones that people are like, oh my God, this doctor's great. And then you go up there and they're like, why are you checking their blood sugar? Like, oh, how about this? How about, hey, it seems like you really caught something here. Good thing you checked their blood sugar. Yeah.
I know.
Again, everyone always sees something back. It's backwards. How many times do you look at someone and go, how is that the reaction you're having? Like, why not this reaction over here? Like, oh, because what an opportunity to say, hey, it's great. You caught this early. If it's going to turn into something, we're going to know, we're going to be able to take care of it. Your mom already has type 1. So you're already like, if that's what happens with you, then we're going to already know what to do. Boy, this is lucky. Like, just couch it differently. Like,
Right.
you know what I mean? Instead of looking at the kids and going, see what this old bitch did to you? Huh?
I know.
Yeah,
I know.
Christ. Like, Jesus Christ.
There was nothing beneficial for that comment. Like, what am I supposed to do? Go back in time and not have them? If that was even true, which it's not true.
Mm-hmm.
But no, it's then my one son told me afterwards, he's like, I'm never going to have kids because I don't want to do this to them. And I'm like, that's great.
Yeah.
Like,
it's great.
Thanks, lady. And then my bill, but let's not forget the bill. So
yeah, what did it cost for her to make your kid upset and not want to have children?
Oh my God. And to accuse me.
Mm-hmm.
So for each visit, she charged for 2, even though we did it as a group, which is fine. She billed my insurance $2,100. I'm not kidding you. And you know, the contracted rate, I owe them $1,100 for that.
Listen, I want to say something. I know I tell people that my kids see, like, for endocrinology, we see a cash pay doctor. And then it's covered by my insurance. Like, I forget what it is, like 85 or 90% or something like that. In case, I've never said this out loud. The visits are $350. They're not $2,100.
I know.
And then they cover whatever they cover. And I end up paying like $40 or $50 for my kids to see a doctor.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So my point is that $2,100 to get that level of care is ridiculous.
I know.
Every decent doctor in the world is going to switch to cash pay. We are going to end up fucking everybody. Like, every decent doctor is going to start saying, I don't take insurance. You can send it in later. Because that's what dentist's office do, by the way. A lot of doctors' offices do that. They're like, look, I don't take your damn insurance. You can go turn it into them later, and I'm sure you'll get reimbursed for most of it. But, like, I'm not getting involved in this game. And good doctors all over the place are doing this now. Now, you got to be careful because eventually doctors are going to do it too. But right now, the ones who can pull their weight and people know, and they know that they can run a business on word of mouth. That's what it really is, by the way. It's like they know they're good and other people will tell other people about them. And to make a reasonable living, they don't have to work all day long. They can actually help you and sit. My kids' doctor's appointments are 30 minutes long if they're telehealth. And when we go in there, they're an hour.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you go and you sit in a lovely chair next to a table with a lamp, and you have a conversation like a human being, and they listen to everything. And when you leave there, everything's done. Scripts are taken care of. You know, if you need a blood work, it's all filled out. It's explained to you. This is what we're going to do. It's what we're looking for. You know, like, all the stuff's done. You get a physical exam, a conversation, you know, and it's $350. And then when it's over, I pay like $50.
It's amazing.
It's not amazing. It's just reasonable. Like, you just have to find reasonable people. That's the problem, is finding reasonable people.
I mean, I'm paying more than $350 and I don't get any of that. I'd happily pay $350 for someone to actually do their job.
I texted with my doctor recently. I was
wow.
Hey, I'm on my way to the pharmacy to pick this up. If they don't have it, what do you want me to do? And she's like, oh, if they don't have it, text me and I'll just send another script for this instead.
Wow.
Yeah, that's all. Find a reasonable person. It's hard. Listen, it's not easy. I'm beyond dumb luck that I found this person. But seriously, I don't know. It's very upsetting to hear that somebody charged you $2,100 to make your kid sad, to say that you were, like, involved in Munchausen's activities, and to then not help with anything.
I know.
All right, I don't know what to tell you. Good luck. You're all dead. It's not gonna. I don't know what you're gonna do. Like, setting. All right, you've made me upset. I'm gonna have lunch now.
Oh, but so you shouldn't be, because truly, I know everybody says it because it's true. Like, thank God for this group. Thank God for all the members and their insight and sharing their knowledge, their frustrations, like all of it. Like, we're all better because of this community. Like, just facts.
Obviously I agree, and I appreciate you saying it, but all it makes me feel like is I don't reach enough people. Like, every time, like, I just said this to somebody privately, but I'll say it here, even though it probably makes me sound crazy. Every time someone says something positive to me, I just think, well, I'm letting other people down. Like, if it works this well, then why can't I reach more people with it and help more people? And so that's the part that just, it breaks my heart. It keeps me up at night, kind of thing, like trying to figure out, like, how do you grow this? And I'll tell you the truth, Heather. The other day, I had a conversation with a person in the podcasting, like, space, like someone who works behind the scenes podcast hosting. So they know, like, you know, they know what's what. I was saying to this person, I don't know, man. I'm like, I'm not growing this thing fast enough. Like, it helps people, but it's not expanding quickly enough and to reach more people because, you know, how long can I do this for? I'm trying to help people now, that kind of thing. And we were on a like a Google meetup or something like that. And he said, let me send you something. And I was like, okay. So he sends me this graphic and I'm looking for it right now. See if I can find it. And he pulls this graphic up and he says, Scott, he goes, by download, you're in the top 2% of all podcasts that exist in the world.
Wow.
And I was like, that's not possible. And he said, now the 2% that are above you, he goes, actually the 1% above you, you could reach. Like, you could get into the top, like, 99 percentile. He's like, that's not undoable for you. He goes, that 1% above, he's like, you're not getting to that. He's like, no one's getting to that. That's dumb luck, smartless, Joe Rogan kind of like space. You know what I mean? Like 30 million people are listening to an episode, that kind of stuff. He's like, you're not reaching that. He goes, no one reaches that. And I was like, okay. He goes, but you're right there. If you could grow 65 more %, you'd be in the top 1%. And he's like,
oh, wow.
He goes, what is it you want? And I was like, I want to reach more people with diabetes. And he goes, you're reaching as many people as this format allows. He's like, no one else is doing that. He's like, all those other shows are like comedy or famous people or something like that. And I was like, right. He goes, he's like, you've done it. You're at the pinnacle right now. And he starts typing around. He goes, look, he goes, I found a couple other podcasts with the word diabetes in the title. And I said, okay. And he goes, there's a couple of them here. And he said, they pop up and down on these like low level, on these subcategory charts. They'll pop in over like the top 200 every once in a while and they drop out again. And I was like, right. He goes, you get more downloads on an episode in the first 2 hours it's out than these people will get in the entire time their episode exists. And he's like, and those people are your closest competition.
Oh, wow. And
you would think that I'd leave that conversation and be like, I am doing it. And instead I left the conversation like, so then there's no way I can get better at this? Like, I can't reach more people and help more people? Like, listen to what Heather just said about the community and the group and the podcast and everything. Like, I can't, like, why can't I find more people? It's a very upsetting reality to learn that you've grown something as big as it almost possibly could be, and yet it's touching such a small percentage of people who live with diabetes that it feels like a failure when you judge it against how many people are walking around with diabetes. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but I think that's a dark way to look at it.
Oh, thanks, bitter.
Welcome to the dark side.
No point in this conversation, Heather, did I just tell you to happy up, did I?
So let me tell you this to make you feel better,
okay.
I think.
We'll see.
So I've also heard about your podcast from Omada, which you know what Omada is, right? The diabetes platform through employers.
No, I don't. I have no idea what that. Can I tell you a big secret about how I've grown it this big?
Yeah.
I don't pay attention to anything anyone else is doing.
Okay.
I don't care what anybody else is doing. I know this works. So I don't like look out into the world for what's going on. I really don't like when that guy mentioned these other two podcasts to me, he said the names of them and I was like, I'm like, I've heard of that one, but I've never listened to it. And that other one, I don't know what you're talking about.
So it's not a podcast. So it's something that's offered through my employer. And I think it's more geared towards type 2, but
okay.
It's just, I mean, there's so many of these types of programs, right? They'll help you with coaching and nutrition and just different things to make your life better.
Okay.
But it's diabetes related. But my coach that I have mentioned, hey, you should start listening to Juicebox. I'm like, I already do. And then that Blue Circle Health, which I know a couple people have posted on the page about that, which I thought was a little suspect, but I decided to check it out anyway.
Mm-hmm.
They also said, you should check out Juicebox Podcast. I'm like, I already do. So those are two professional organizations that are very well aware of the podcast, that are spreading the word and sharing that with their patients, clients, however you want to refer to
thank you to them very much. Also, I Googled Omada Health and I see they're valued as $1 billion company. And I'm over here worrying about the overtime on my podcast recording, but I guess okay. You know, if I had $1 billion, I know what I would do with it. And I know how I'd help more people with diabetes. But also, it's very possible I would just go to a beach and I'd tell you guys you're all on your own. So just let's be grateful. Maybe that's not happening. I appreciate that. And I know that. Like, look, I see people coming into the private Facebook group every day. How did you hear about this? My doctor told me, my nurse told me, a lady whispered it to me in the hallway at my endo's office. Like, you know, like I know it's everywhere. It charts in 48 countries. I'm not unaware of any of that. It's just that if there's 1.8 billion or million people walking around with type 1 diabetes, and even though the group is huge at 50,000 people, that's not 1.8 million. And I'm not saying everybody would like me or everybody is even interested, but doesn't it feel like there should be a bigger percentage than that who I could make aware of it at the very least? Like, that's the part that, like, it feels like you've done a lot and it's not enough. That feeling. I live with that feeling a lot. I manage it. I used to not manage it well. I don't feel badly about it anymore, but it is how I think about the business side of what I'm doing and how I'm trying to drive things and make them grow. There's more people out there that need help. They don't know the podcast exists. Like, that's the thing I'm trying to get squared away somehow. I don't care if I'm in the top 1% or like of podcasts. Like, that's really cool. I can't believe I'm just blowing past that. Actually, Heather, it's an insane accomplishment. Okay. but it says a lot of things, you know, about the content, about the delivery. You know, it says good things about me, which I would probably do well to celebrate once in a while, maybe more than I do. I don't know. Like, it just seems to me like this is a thing that I've seen help a lot of people, and whether it's going to help everyone, I don't think it could, but I wish they had the opportunity to find out if it was going to be valuable for them or not. And that seems like that's my responsibility, because whose else is it?
I mean, you have to realize, so there's going to be a subset of that population, of that 1.8, that is happy to manage at, I'm not going to assign a number to it, whatever.
Yeah, they're not looking to upgrade. They're good where they're at.
They don't want to micromanage.
Yeah, right.
I mean, and like, that's okay. Not everybody's right.
No, I don't have a problem with that. I don't want to sound crazy. That's why I didn't want to bring this up. I don't want to sound crazy. Like, I don't think every 1.8 million people is out there and they're mine and I should get them as a listener. I get that there's a swath of them who are like, hey, I'm good. Or maybe they actually just are good. Like, they're like, I managed a 6A1C, I'm fine. And there's a group of people who are like, oh, listen, I have a 7A1C and I ain't looking to make this any better. So blah, blah, or I don't have the bandwidth for this, whatever. But out of 1.8 million Americans, like, you'd think that 50,000 wouldn't be such a big number for a Facebook group, or that the amount of downloads that I do per episode, which I'm not going to share with you. Like, I look at that number and I think, God, that seems like a really small number compared to the possibilities of who would be interested in this. But yet it's not. It's right in the top 2%.
Yeah, I think it's huge.
Yeah, it is, but it's still listen, Heather, it is, but it's still disappointing to me, okay?
Listen.
Yeah, would you just let me be upset for a fucking second? Jesus Christ. It's just like it. And it's not that it's not enough. It feels like a missed opportunity.
No, I hear you.
Yeah, I know.
I do.
I'm trying to be funny and say how I feel at the same time, because I don't want this to sound like all like boo-hoo, because I'm doing great. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I know I'm doing well, and I know I'm doing well for people.
Help everyone, and that's like admirable.
Yeah,
but not everyone is like. I would imagine the vast majority of us are type A, right? Mm-hmm. And we're micromanaging, and we're making ourselves crazy because we can do X, Y, Z, right? I think we all probably have a similar personality type. Yeah. Not everybody has that. Do you know what I mean?
I know.
Like,
I think we're all
I do know what you mean. Crazy in this group of, you know, I've been high for 2 seconds. What do I do now? And like, there'll be 100 people that chime in of, this is what you can do.
Yeah.
It's like,
we know what to do. Get over here right now. Do this, do that, do this. Bing, bang, boom. It's all set. I learned that in episode 763 of the Juicebox Podcast. Like, I know, I see it all the time. It's so fucking wonderful. Like, it really, it just, sometimes it melts my heart. Sometimes it makes it feel like it's going to explode with like joy. Like, seriously, Some days I have a bad day, and then someone comes over and is like, look, I just wanted to share with you that this happened for me or for my kid, or, you know, like, you have no idea. Like, I shudder to say this because I grew up in blogging where somebody who was blogging to 50 people would do that thing where they're like, I get notes all the time because they're trying to make themselves seem bigger in the space. Do you know what I mean? Like, that happens a lot, whether you would know or not. I get them every 5 minutes. Like they come in 73 different ways through DMs and private messages and emails, and some people who I can't believe, but I gave them my phone number one time. And I probably get 20 or 25 notes a day.
Oh, wow.
From people who are like, hey, this thing this guy made, like, look what it did. You know what I mean? And and it just doesn't feel like I'm reaching enough people. I don't know. Like, it's upsetting. Like, and it's heartwarming at the same time. It's a weird space to be in. The way it feels is distasteful to say out loud. But it's like that last episode of Schindler's List when Oscar Schindler realizes he's wearing a pin that he could have sold it. Like, it's not, obviously this is not an apples to apples comparison, but like that feeling of I was out here doing everything I could and I still didn't cover it the way I feel like I could have.
Yeah.
And then days pass and I get older. You know what I mean? And I'm like, I don't know how long I can keep this going for. So, and then what happens to everybody after it's gone? So you
don't
think
say that? That's like giving me anxiety.
You think you're bitter? I'm dark too. Like, I'm trying to, like, you know what? It's funny. It's like, it's be careful what you wish for. Like, what's worse than not helping people? Helping people and then not being able to help the rest of them. Like, now it's tangible. Like, before it's just a wish. I think I could help people, but I couldn't figure out a way to do it. Oh, well. But I actually figured out I could help them. Mm-hmm. And now I can't figure out how to get to more of them. That feels like a failing for me.
It shouldn't. I think that just makes you a good person, an honest person, someone with integrity. Do you know what I mean? Like, you care. I think that's admirable.
Okay.
It's a good quality to have, even though it makes you dark.
All right. Well, I'm not, but I'm generally speaking, I'm not. You know, I'm upbeat.
I know.
Yeah. That's all. This was upset. You bummed me out, Heather.
Sorry.
No, it's not your fault. Don't worry about it.
I'm just trying to recruit people into like the dark chat group that you're going to create.
Yeah, she's like, I just want people in the WhatsApp called Bitter Heather.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I actually think there'd be value in that. So,
it would have to be balanced because, right? Like, you want to vent, but then you want to let it go.
Yeah, it doesn't.
So
it's not doom and gloomy or anything like that afterwards. It's just like, this is how it feels, and I just want to know that other people have felt this too. Mm-hmm. So I just looked at my email. Hi, we are 2 days into our 2-year-old being diagnosed. I just finished episode 3 of the Juicebox Podcast. This diagnosis is another kick in the face to our family that's dealing with another chronic illness already. I really appreciate your words. I feel broken, so broken. Thank you for some hope. Now, you would think that I'd read that and go, look at this. I'm going to help this person. This little 2-year-old kid is going to have a better life, and his parents are going to be better off because they found this podcast 2 days into it. I know that's true because I've seen it happen tens of thousands of times. But later I'll just think like, how can I find more people like that to help? And then that sounds pompous, doesn't it? And then that's a different problem. God damn it, Heather. All right.
That's not what it is.
Yeah, I know it's not, but it sounds, somebody right now is listening to it going, oh, this fucking asshole thinks he can help everybody. What's he, Jesus? Rah, rah, rah. I don't feel that. I don't feel like that. I made this thing. Overwhelmingly, it helps people. I just want to give it to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's all.
And that email is like heartbreaking.
Oh, all day long. All day long. Like, don't stop sending emails, but some days I click on that. I'm like, uh-oh, here we go. You know what I mean? You're like, it's time to like absorb somebody else's sorrow for a minute. And like, cause I really want to feel what he's saying, this guy. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And to this person, if you ever hear this, you're going to be like, oh my God, that was 5 years ago. I guess he's on episode 3. He's going to like, his kid's going to be 17. He's going to be like, oh my God, I think I'm the one that sent that email. I don't know, Heather. We got to stop. Mm-hmm. This is costing me a lot of money in overtime editing. Okay.
Sorry.
I don't want Rob feeling bad. He should get paid for his work. You know what I mean? You don't even know who Rob is. You're like, Rob, who? No, he's the guy that edits the show. He's fantastic, by the way. All right, hold on. I'm going to say goodbye. That's enough of this. You were great, by the way. Thank you.
Oh, it was so great to talk to you. Thank you.
Oh, no, I had a great time. Hold on one second. The conversation you just enjoyed was brought to you by US Med. usmed.com/juicebox or call 888-721-1514. Get started today and get your supplies from US Med. A huge thank you to one of today's sponsors, Gvoke Glucagon. Find out more about Gvoke HypoPen at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. You spell that GVOKEGLUCAGON.com/juicebox. I can't thank you enough for listening. Please make sure you're subscribed or following in your audio app. I'll be back tomorrow with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast. The episode you just heard was professionally edited by Wrong Way Recording. WrongWayRecording.com.